Hey y'all, welcome to Horrible Gaming. My name is Nora, and on today's video we are playing some more Palia. Today I am building a tea house using the new building blocks that we just got with the recent update. This was by far the hardest build I think I've ever done with the blocks, especially because we're extremely limited right now on what we can do with them. And even though that this build was quite the challenge to make, it was super fun and I hope it brings you some inspiration. To start off my building, I will be using the small stone block to kind of create a foundation for our house. Now I do want to disclaim, I do not have every single dimension memorized in this speed build today. It did take me several hours to do, but I believe the base was about 14 tiles long. And after you place down the whole entire foundation, this is what you should have at the moment. You're going to notice an empty centerpiece, and that's actually where we're going to be building some steps that leads into our actual tea house. For the next stage of my build, we're going to work on the flooring of our tea house and then finally get some walls up. Now I do want to disclaim that I will be relocating this build, so you will see us working in a different spot in a couple of minutes, but the dimensions will remain the same. And then just like I mentioned earlier, now that our flooring is done, we're going to do some rock wall pieces on each side. Your dimensions for this should be 4 by 7, and then once that's complete, I'll start editing the front part of today's speed build. Once you get your base done, this is what your building should look like so far. So obviously it is definitely not a building at the moment, but we are almost done with the foundation. The next step is to do an additional layer of the stone wall pieces. So you'll have 2 layers of this, and we're just going to place this directly on top of the first stone piece. Once I get the rest of the second layer finished, you're going to notice an area that has nothing placed, and that's actually the door frame to our building. I will also be removing 2 pieces in between the door frame, and this is going to be where my first windows are. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do our final layer for the base, and that is going to be the ceiling of our tea house. So we're just going to fill all of this in with the wood ceiling item. If you didn't want to use the wood, you could do stone too, but I feel like this kind of breaks up all the cool tones that the stone has. Now this is what our building looks like so far. I did place 2 additional wood flooring pieces outside for the porch area, and then I filled in the emptiness from adding these 2 additional pieces with some more of the stone blocks. However, I decided to change this front area a little bit and do these little post beams, and this is going to support the roof build that we do for this building. And I do add a second flooring piece still into this. It's just later on in the footage. I apologize again that I'm all over the place at this stage during the video. I did not pre-plan any of this part of the build, so I'm kind of just trying things until I figure out what I like best. But for the next stage of our build, it's working on the first part of our rooftop, and we attach 2 of the wooden beams together, and then we're just going to connect these little triangular pieces all the way on each side. Something that I really hope to see in the future of Palia with the building blocks is more building options. I would love little railing items, maybe even some curved pieces. I feel like the curved pieces definitely could have helped accomplish the tea house roof style better, but I am making best with the options that I have at the moment. I'm still really happy with what we built today because it was extremely difficult to do being that we're this limited. Next, I took 2 of the wooden blocks to kind of like fill in behind the angled roof pieces, and then we're going to go ahead and start adding some dimension and windows to the front of our building. It was also at this stage of the build where I was wishing yet again that we had more building block pieces. That way I could do a really nice window trim, but we're going to have to go with the simple option of using the regular stone block pieces to kind of just add a little bit more dimension to the front of it, so it's not just like a straight wall of panels. It's kind of like Animal Crossing in that way, or even Minecraft, where you just have like a straight wall of panels. Your building is going to feel very flat and not have that much realism to it. And then once I finish framing in with the small stone blocks, then I'll go ahead and finish up our rooftop. So there will be a few transitions when we're building the rooftop just because I honestly really struggled with this, but we're going to do one layer of the single wooden small blocks, and then I'm going to use 2 of the wooden slopes on each side, and then we're just going to extend this out to do a second layer of roof tiles. Again, I am so sorry that this is all over the place. This was my first time ever trying to do a rooftop like this, but the end slope pieces are going to kind of clip into the other slopes that we attached above, so you should have kind of a look like this. And then I'm just going to straighten out these center pieces a little bit more and glitch in a additional piece. That way there's no unwanted gaps. And then the next step is to basically fill in behind here. And because I don't want this to take a ton of resources, I decided on using another layer of the flooring pieces. So there is technically room to do a attic room if you want this to be part of your build, but I chose not to do that just because I wanted to make this build less overwhelming as possible. And to make it a lot easier to work on the side pieces, you're just going to let it snap with the grid onto each side, and this is going to be the side parts of our rooftop. I'm also going to remove some of the pieces over here so I can kind of clip in these slopes to the other side, so it kind of gives like a little bit more dimension in the corners. That way I can also attach some lanterns onto the build too. Now, I know that many people are doing like the curved look with these wooden slope pieces, but it just did not look that good with this building. For me personally, this looked best for my plot, so if you wanted to change up the roof style a little bit, you absolutely could. I was just trying to go for simple and as realistic as possible. And then directly below where we started the additional slopes for the rooftop, I'm going to finish off the first level over here and just kind of make sure the roof is aligned on both sides of my build. And then behind these slopes on the very bottom, that's where we're going to do some additional small wooden blocks, or you can leave it open like I did if you're planning to do a future attic area. And then after you go around on each side with both wooden slopes, this is what your rooftop should look like. We're going to fill in with the flooring pieces on the big empty space. I'm going to leave this open and available to me in case I decide to do a rooftop area for this build. And I also just wanted to do a quick reminder that in between both rooftop slopes, there is a single layer of the small wooden blocks, and the pattern that you're seeing in front of the building is the same thing on each side of the building. It's just a different angle. And now that our roof is done, it's time to start on our staircase, and this is going to use the wood flooring pieces, and then we're going to place these on top of 2 gourmet cutting boards that are stacked on top of each other. The reason why we stack the gourmet cutting boards on top of each other is to add some much needed height in between each of our steps. That way it just looks a little bit more realistic, and we're going to repeat this process until we reach the top level of our porch. Now that the structure is done, this is the part that I always look forward to, is the detailing and designing part. So once I finish up the staircase, there will be a couple of transitions when I do the decorating to this build. I'm going to probably use a ton of blue colors just because that is the color theme that I'm going for on my Zen plot. And then we're going to use the Dragon Tide and Emberborn collection furniture pieces inside too. And then after adding this last detail in front of the door, this is what our building structure looks like. So now it's time for the fun part, and that's by decorating this build. For the door frame, I'm going to use the bellflower curtain, and to kind of glitch this onto the blocks because it won't place by itself, we're going to use a homestead shelf and then delete it immediately after. I learned this trick actually from Emma, and I'll have her channel linked in the video's description. She also inspired the archway that leads to my garden right next to this build too. Now that we got the curtain up, I'll do the same trick inside too on each of the window frames, and I do want to let y'all know that there will be a couple of transitions through the decorating process just because I needed to go grind for some resources to be able to finish the build. With that being said, because I had to grind so much, I went ahead and just transitioned the footage to how everything looks fully decorated. That way y'all weren't having to recreate and then delete things because I was constantly changing my mind. But here is how our building looks fully decorated. I used a ton of Maji market items in this build just because it really suited the tea house sort of theme. Obviously, because I don't have a lot of traditional tea house like items, I did my best with what we had. I also tried to mess with the idea of a tatami floor, but I don't have enough to actually finish that, and that's by using these 2 Dragon Tide rugs together. I really want to get 3 additional runners, that way I can frame in the big rug to kind of give it that sort of effect. I also decided last minute to remove 2 pieces on each side of the building to do these large screen-like walls, and I did this by just connecting 4 beams together and then doing a second layer on top of it. Anyways, this is how it's fully decorated. created. I'm definitely going to add some more details to it as I get more items, but I hope that today's video brought you some much needed inspiration with the new building blocks. If there's any build ideas you would love to see me create with the new building blocks, let me know in the comments section. Your feedback definitely helps me plan out future content for Palia. Before today's video also ends, I do want to give a huge shout out to all of my channel members. Thank you so much for supporting me as a creator. Just your support in general means the world to me. Thank you so much for watching and have a horrible day. I'll see you next video.